The National Park Service has a script for when people go missing. Blame the weather, blame the terrain, blame the wildlife. What they do not have a script for, and what 3 rangers are breaking their NDAs to tell you tonight, is what search teams actually find out there, and why every single one of them will tell you the same thing when they are no longer afraid of losing their jobs. Never hike alone after dark, not because of the animals, not because of the terrain, because of what the thermal cameras have caught moving through these parks at speeds and angles that no animal on any official record has ever been documented to move. This is Obscure Nights. One question connects all 3 of these rangers tonight, and none of them were asked it officially because no official investigation ever connected their accounts. The question is this: what did the search dogs do when they reached the point where the trail stopped making sense? Hold that, because the answer is the same in all 3 cases, and it is not what you would expect from a trained working animal. He heard his partner's voice calling from the ravine. That is where this account has to start. Not with the patrol briefing or the trail conditions or the 8 years of experience that should have told Brennan exactly what he was hearing. It has to start with the voice, because the voice is the thing, the specific detail that separates this account from every standard missing persons case I have ever covered on this channel. His partner was standing next to him, Brennan here. 8 years patrolling the restricted zones of North Cascades National Park. September 19, 2019. Evening patrol, Restricted Zone 7, a section of park that is closed to the public without explanation on any signage and without documentation in any public-facing park record. My partner that night was a ranger I had worked with for 3 years. I will call him Cole. We were at the ridgeline above the eastern ravine when it started. Cole's voice, coming from the bottom of the ravine approximately 200 feet below us, calling my name. The specific cadence of how Cole calls my name when something is wrong. Not shouting, not panicking. The calm, controlled call of a trained ranger who needs assistance. I turned to say something to Cole. Cole was standing 4 feet to my right, looking at me with an expression I have never seen on his face before or since. He had heard it too. He was hearing his own voice calling my name from 200 feet below us. We stood at that ridge for approximately 90 seconds. The voice continued. My name. Cole's voice. The correct cadence. The correct register. Everything about it acoustically consistent with Cole's voice except the location. Cole said, "Do not go down there." I was already not going down there. We completed the patrol route and returned to the station. Neither of us filed an incident report that night. We made that decision together on the walk back without discussing it. We both understood that filing a report meant answering questions neither of us had answers for. 3 days later, I was doing a routine check of the eastern ravine perimeter from the trail above. Standard protocol. Visual confirmation that the restricted zone was clear. At the base of the ravine, visible from the trail above, there was a campsite. Not a Park Service setup. A personal camp. Tent, gear, fire ring, the specific arrangement of someone who had been there for more than one night. And beside the tent, boots. A pair of hiking boots placed upright side by side in front of the tent entrance. Laces tied. No footprints leading away from the campsite in any direction. None. The ground around the camp was soft, the kind of ground that holds every impression. There were footprints inside the camp perimeter consistent with one person moving around the site over several days. There were no footprints leading out of it. Whoever had been at that campsite had not walked away. I radioed it in. A team was sent to retrieve the camp. When I asked for the incident report 3 weeks later, I was told no retrieval had been logged for that location on that date. The voice was Cole's. Cole was standing next to me. I've never found an explanation that accounts for both of those facts simultaneously. His partner's voice calling from a ravine 200 feet below while his partner stood beside him. A campsite with no footprints leading out. A retrieval that was never officially logged. Subscribe to Obscure Nights right now. These accounts exist because rangers decided the silence was worse than the risk. Every subscriber keeps these stories visible. Hit the button. Story 2. A dead zone in the Smokies where the dogs refused to enter, and what was inside it should not have been possible. The forest went quiet before I saw anything. Not gradually. Not the way sound fades at dusk when the day birds stop and the night sounds have not started. All at once. Like something had reached into the ambient and removed it. Insects. Wind. The creek I had been following for 2 miles. Gone. Dana here. 6 years with the NPS Biological Survey Division in the Great Smoky Mountains. August 4th, 2021. I was doing a routine survey sweep of a section in the southern backcountry that my supervisor had flagged for anomalous wildlife data, specifically the absence of wildlife data. Trail cameras in that section had been returning blank cards for 3 months. No deer, no bear, no small mammals. Nothing. I went in with 2 dogs, Rex and a younger dog named Scout who was on his 4th field deployment. Rex stopped at the boundary of a specific clearing approximately 1.5 miles from the nearest maintained trail. He had been tracking confidently for 2 hours. He sat down at the clearing edge and would not move forward. Scout sat down beside him without being commanded. I have worked with Rex for 4 years. He has never refused a search area. I noted the coordinate, noted the behavior, and decided to proceed into the clearing alone. The clearing was approximately 30 meters across. Old growth around the perimeter. Trees that had been standing for well over a century. The ground inside the clearing was different from the surrounding terrain. Softer. The kind of soft that happens when ground has not been walked on for a long time and the leaf layer has built up undisturbed. There was a child standing at the center of the clearing. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, dark clothing. He was facing away from me looking toward the far tree line. I called out. He did not turn. I walked toward him. The ground was soft enough that every step I took was audible. He would have heard me approaching from 20 meters. He did not react. When I was 10 feet away, he turned. I want to be careful about how I describe what I saw because I have spent 2 years trying to find the precise language for it, and I always come back to the same problem. His face was correct. Features, proportions, the specific expression of a child who has been somewhere alone for a long time. Everything anatomically present. But his clothing was wrong, not damaged, not dirty the way a child lost in wilderness for any significant time would be dirty. Wrong in a way that took me several seconds to identify. His clothing was the style of several decades ago. Not a costume, not deliberately vintage. The specific construction and cut of children's clothing from a time I associate with photographs rather than living memory. I asked him his name. He told me. I asked him how long he had been in the clearing. He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "Since the summer." I asked which summer. He did not answer. I radioed the station with his description and our coordinates. The response came back within 4 minutes. A name in the missing persons records matching his description. A case from 1981. A 7-year-old boy who had gone missing from a family campsite in the southern Smokies during the summer of that year and was never recovered. He had not aged? I stayed with him until a team arrived. He spoke to me occasionally during that time, about the clearing, about the trees, about the sounds the forest made at night that he had gotten used to. He spoke about these things the way a child speaks about a familiar place. The team that arrived was not the team I expected. I did not recognize the vehicles or the uniforms. They thanked me for my report, told me the child would be taken for medical evaluation, and asked me to return to the station. I filed a full incident report. I have never been able to access that report again. The case number was issued, but the file is restricted at a clearance level above mine. The boy from 1981 would be approximately 50 years old now. He looked 7 when I left him in that clearing. I need you to understand what a thermal camera shows before I tell you what mine showed. A thermal camera does not show shapes. It shows heat signatures. It shows the specific heat output of a living body moving through an environment. The warmer the signature, the brighter it appears on the screen. A human being registers as a specific brightness. A deer registers differently. A bear registers differently again. After 12 years of night patrol in Shenandoah National Park, I can identify most warm-blooded animals by their thermal signature the way a birder identifies species by silhouette. What appeared on my camera on November 21st, 2022 at 2:43 a.m. did not match any signature in 12 years of experience. Marcus, 12 years NP-S Night Patrol. Shenandoah National Park, Restricted Night Patrol Zone 14. Standard shift, standard equipment, nothing in the briefing that indicated anything unusual about the zone that night. The signature appeared at the northern tree line at 2:43 a.m. Bright. Human range heat output. Moving along the tree line at a pace I initially logged as standard hiking speed. Then it accelerated. I want to give you a precise number because in 12 years I have learned that precision is what separates a credible account from something easily dismissed. The signature covered 400 meters in approximately 10 seconds. I have the timestamp data. I ran the calculation 3 times that night and once more the following morning. 40 meters per second, 144 kilometers per hour, on all fours. The movement pattern was not bipedal. The gait signature, the specific rhythm of a moving body's heat output, was quadrupedal, 4 contact points, moving at a speed that no documented animal in the Shenandoah ecosystem is capable of producing. I tracked it for approximately 90 seconds. It crossed the restricted zone in a diagonal line, not following any trail, not navigating around obstacles, moving through the terrain as if the terrain was not a consideration. Then it reached the eastern rock face of the ridgeline, and it went into the rock. Not around it, not up it, into it. The signature did not diminish the way a heat source diminishes when it moves away from a camera. It disappeared at the surface of the rock face, one frame present, next frame absent, the specific reading of a heat source that has ceased to exist in the camera's range rather than moved out of it. I filed a full incident report with the timestamp data and my calculated speed figures attached. My supervisor called me into his office the following morning. He placed a document on his desk and told me to sign it. Non-disclosure agreement, federal language. Covers all observations made during night patrol in Restricted Zone 14 on November 21st, 2022. Then he said something I have not forgotten. He said, "Marcus, the footage is already gone. This is just the paperwork." I have spent a year thinking about what that sentence means. About who had access to the footage between my shift ending and my supervisor's office the following morning. About how many times before November 21st that footage from Restricted Zone 14 had already been gone before anyone had to ask for it. I signed the document, but I kept my written log, the timestamp data, the calculation. I am not telling you what was on that thermal camera because I have an explanation. I am telling you because I do not have one. And in 12 years of night patrol, I have learned that the absence of an explanation in this specific zone is itself a kind of answer. The footage is gone, the rock face is still there, and whatever went into it is still in there, 40 meters per second on all fours, into solid rock, and footage that was already gone before anyone asked for it. These are the reasons the signs tell you to stay on the trail. Not the animals, not the terrain. Subscribe to Obscure Nights right now and stay with us, because next week we follow the thermal signature. And what is at the coordinate it was moving toward has been there long before this park existed. 3 rangers, 3 NDAs. 3 accounts from people who understood exactly what they were risking by telling you this. And now, the question I told you to hold at the beginning. What did the search dogs do when the trail stopped making sense? Rex and Scout sat down at the clearing boundary and refused to enter. That is the same behavior, the same specific refusal that appeared in the Glacier cases, the Olympic cases, and the Ouachita cases covered on this channel. Trained working dogs with years of field experience sitting down at a specific boundary and making a decision their handlers had never seen them make before. These are not animals that spook. These are animals that process environmental information faster and more accurately than any human instrument. When a trained working dog refuses a trail, it has assessed something at that boundary that its entire training and instinct is telling it not to cross. Listen to the dogs. Here is what these 3 accounts teach you practically about hiking in national park backcountry. If you hear a voice calling from a location that does not match where the person you are with is standing, do not follow it. Do not call back to it. Move toward the person who is physically present with you and move toward the exit. What Brennan described is consistent with accounts from multiple wilderness traditions across multiple continents. Something that mimics, something that learned the specific voice of the person standing next to you. How long it listened before it used it. That is the question nobody wants to ask. If the forest goes completely silent, not gradually, all at once, treat it as a signal, not an anomaly. Dana's account and multiple others in the Obscure Nights archive describe this specific environmental shift as the consistent precursor to encounters that cannot be explained. It is not random. Something causes it. Move out of the area before you find out what. If you are on a night trail and you have a thermal device of any kind, phone camera in thermal mode, trail camera, scope, and you see a heat signature moving at a speed or in a pattern that does not match any animal you can identify, do not approach it. Do not attempt to document it further. Log your GPS coordinates and exit the area. The documentation is less important than your exit. Stay on the trail, not because of the signs, because of what the rangers who patrol off the trail have seen when they stepped off it. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.